the biggest indicator of who had the happiest and most productive life was actually early information about from their childhood of which boys had been the most industrious. They worked hard, they studied hard, they had jobs that they did activities, they were engaged in their lives more fully. It did not have to do with their finances, it didn't have to do with their social status, their race, religion, their intelligence. What it had to do with is how industrious they were. There's another study, I don't know if you've heard of West Point, which is one of our military academies in the United States. We were trying to figure out which cadets, which students do best, and which ones will stay and actually complete schooling, complete their training. And what they found, they studied everything. Was it their academic performance? Was it their physical fitness? Was it their SATs, their test scores before they came into college? It wasn't any of that. What made the difference between those boys that made it through and became good at what they were doing was just the grit. Those that would persevere was the biggest thing that made the difference. How many of you have ever heard of an intelligence test, an IQ test? You know, Louis Tierman invented the Stanford-Binet intelligence test, which is very much used in the United States. And thinking that if we could just chart a person's intelligence, what is their IQ, that would help us predict who would do better in life later on. And he thought that too, that's why he developed the test. They did all these studies, and then he followed people that he had measured as having a high intelligence over the years. And what he found is that the intelligence had nothing to do with how good someone turned out, or how productive they were, or how happy, or what it was. It had nothing to do with intelligence, although they still keep using the intelligence test, and he thought because they're so easy to administer. But they actually do not predict who does best in school, who does best in life at all. And there are many new studies out now based on Erickson's work on talent. Because what they're finding is they thought, many of us think that, how many of you think people have, like you have a natural talent? You're either good at something or you're not. You're a good musician or a good student or you're not. Do you have that sense of talent here? I'm sure you do. So what we often think is that, oh, I'm not good at that. He's good at that. She's good at that. She's got a natural talent. What they found is that talent is not an indicator of future success either. That actually, because we can always learn and grow, it's not so much the natural talent we have in the beginning of our lives, it's how much we develop ourselves that makes a difference in how productive we are. So, and it's that level of engaging. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the people that we know, like musicians and mathematicians, these studies of their minds, it's not so much what their natural abilities are, but are they willing to put in the hard work of learning and growing. And there's a certain number of hours you need to do to become really good at something. And how many of you have ever heard of the Beatles? All right. Who's ever heard of Bill Gates? And recently, I know you've probably all heard of Tiger Woods. Is that true? But these are people.
Some of them may have envied him too.
I don't know. So these are all very high performers, but what they found they had in common is that each of them had put in at least 10,000 hours of developing their craft, and that's what starts to help you become a master at something. And those that don't put in that level of investment don't achieve that level of performance. Tiger Woods became such a good golfer at such an early age. He started playing golf at the age of 3. He put in his 10,000 hours earlier than other people would, which actually helps perform. So this engaging is a very important part of really being a productive and happy and satisfied person. And loss aversion we've talked about, that's based on Daniel Kahneman and Tversky's work. It's award-winning Nobel Prize research that shows over and over again that unfortunately, we're so motivated to avoid loss or avoid pain rather than do the things that would actually help us have gain. We do it with money, we do it with relationships. We're so afraid that we might lose something that we don't engage in the things that might help us gain something. And it's one of the biggest things we need to be aware of, because you have to be willing to take risks in order to really be a good leader, to be happy, to be satisfied, and to learn and grow.
Okay, so we're going to zip on here. I just want to remind you where we are. We've covered yearning so far, and this was engaging. Engaging is critical. We told you we were going to emphasize engaging because without engaging, the game doesn't happen. But when I engage, then I begin to revelate. Transformation requires that you learn things about yourself, that you reveal things about yourself, that you learn to see the world differently. Critical element. So what do you see up there? Huh? I've been wondering culturally how this was going to work. So call it. Rabbit? How many do you see a rabbit up there? What do you see? Both what? You got to tell me which both you're seeing. So here's the duck's bill, right? And here's the rabbit's ears. You see? So it's a perspective transformation. This is really important for us to understand. Let's get one more. See, well, what do you see there? This is classic. Faces. How many people see faces? Two faces. How many? What else do you see? A vase. How many do you see the vase? Okay, good. So that's about how it usually breaks down. So revelating has to do with looking at the same world but seeing it differently. And this is a key skill of the transformational leader. The transformational leader knows that they have limited perspective. And they know that that perspective must be expanded and helped out by those around them, which is part of why this participation is so important. Revelating has to do with awakening to your internal programming. It has to do with identifying your current operating system. The beauty of us as human beings is, and in India you have one of the finest sciences about how to deal with this, is Advaita Vedanta, which is the ability to become aware of who you are in the moment as you're being you. And with Advaita Vedanta, you can notice the patterns, and you can notice what's going on inside, and ultimately disidentify with your earthly self, and ultimately identify with cosmic consciousness. But we're in business right now, so I'm going to be pragmatic, and it is pragmatic. The beauty of it is spiritual development is facilitated. I don't believe you can develop one way without developing the other. So we notice our limitations. Not only do we notice our limitations, but we notice the pattern of our limitations. This is a mouse in a maze. This neuroscience research has gotten so fantastic they can actually wire the mouse's brain and see where the neurons are firing when. That mouse creates an exact duplicate of the